The truth occurs. The truth occurs. The truth occurs.
Hi everyone. Well, there have been more bird and fish deaths and all over the world. I've been doing a lot of investigating and I'm going to do my best to share with you what I found. So just to recapitulate, just after New Year's, birds started to drop from the sky in Beebe, Arkansas, and it was somehow blamed on fireworks. It was a very hokey explanation. The figures later went up to as many as 5,000 birds in total dying in Arkansas. And also, right around the same time, about 100,000 drumfish turned up dead in a river in Arkansas. Then just days after that, this time it was in Louisiana, in Point Coupé Parish, and they don't know what killed those birds either, although they've also pretty much ruled out poisoning. So in this case, in Gilbertsville, Kentucky, they have, again, mysterious mass bird death all over the city, and they've ruled out poisoning. It's very similar, birds are just falling down dead, already dead, from the sky. Here they specified that there were hundreds of birds that fell dead in Louisiana, that Maryland is now looking into massive fish deaths in Chesapeake Bay, and that there have also been hundreds of thousands of sardines washing up dead in Brazil. And as they put it, a carpet of dead snapper has appeared on a New Zealand beach, according to the New Zealand Herald. Phys.org.com says power line blamed for bird kill in Louisiana. They're trying to tell us that the birds flew into power lines, but I don't buy that one either, not any more than I buy that they died from fireworks. A power line is very small. Yeah, all the birds are going to go fly directly into like a string in the air. I don't know, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, a lot of people sent me, a lot of links regarding mass die-offs of fish or birds kind of all over the world, not including the ones I just covered. This is from January 3rd. It's a little bit different in that they only found a few birds. And in this case, they think that it may be some kind of bird flu. But this one was from May 2010 and involved the death of about 10,000 saiga antelopes in Kazakhstan who were found to have died from some kind of disease or damage to their lungs. And they don't really know what did it, but in the report they mentioned that in one case there was a strange fog seen creeping in a field where the antelopes then died. So was it a chemical or biological weapons test? I don't know, but it's very different from what happened with the birds and fish in the States recently. At the time of this article, they said that they had found about 50 dead birds and they were trying to somehow link it to fireworks. Where have I heard that before? I don't know if this case is linked to the others because apparently mass deaths in animals and birds and fish and whatever, they do happen. Let's not jump to conclusions that all deaths, all these mass bird and fish and animal deaths all over the world are caused from the same thing because, well, there's a lot of media hype about this and understandably, and it is very bizarre. Let's not lump it all together. Here was one theory about what's causing these deaths. And this was linked to a top U.S. official murdered after Arkansas weapons test causes mass deaths. This originally came from whatdoesitmean.com, written by Sorcha Fall. Now, I'm a little skeptical about Sorcha Fall articles because I can't help noticing that it's always like some event happens, then the Russian military or government writes a memo which is then immediately leaked to Sorcha Fall. And it's always the US that did it, whatever it was. Not saying the US is perfect or anything, but you can't just jump to conclusions. So I don't know. I wouldn't personally take this at face value. Also linking it to the death of John Wheeler. He was a special assistant to the Secretary of the Air Force. Apparently, according to her, he had some secret knowledge about phosgene gas, which was to be used as a chemical weapon, which is very dangerous and can, destroy your lungs, like cause your lungs to explode or something like that. And that it's banned, but they'd been bringing it back to the U.S. and they were going to then use it in Afghanistan or something like that. And that they were testing it, and that this is what caused the death of the birds and the fish. Okay, I would have my doubts about the fish because the fish are underwater. So how are you going to kill the fish with phosgene gas? And why would it be only one type of fish? So right away that kind of made me skeptical. And the birds, well, that wouldn't explain what sent them up in the air in the first place because it was night. So let's say you disperse some chemicals up in the sky, but why are the birds up there in the first place, number one? And two, it's a toxic chemical. It would come down on, the people, probably not just kill one flock of blackbirds. And phosgene gas has a particular smell like mown hay or something like that, cut grass. So you'd think somebody would have mentioned a strange smell, but there was nothing there. Also, it's not only used for chemical weapons, it's used by the pharma industry for some things, so it's not, like completely banned for everything as far as I understand. Of course, I'm no expert. But Sorchafal, Russian military, Putin leaking documents, I don't know. Here's a better explanation. This is from YouTube channel Patriotic Spaces channel. Alert, warning, danger, New Madrid earthquake imminent. Proof that HAARP is being used. And before I get into what Patriotic Space says in his video, which is very good, I just want to mention that I, of course, first contacted Scott from Believers Underground because he's got a lot of expertise with geophysics. And I asked him what he thought. And he said, it's probably post-glacial rebound, that the fish could be from liquid carbon dioxide gas on the bottom of the lake, either from fracking or earthquakes, and they did have a lot of earthquakes in Arkansas recently, and that the same thing had happened in Africa, so that from the earthquakes or the fracking, this gas leaks, it's heavy, it goes to the bottom, and the drum are bottom feeders, so they get poisoned by the gas. And as for the birds, he says there's a potential magmatic earthquake event. I wasn't sure if he said magnetic or magmatic, but anyway, some kind of earthquake event or sound event coming from the earth, and that they should check the birds' eardrums, check the birds' ears for broken eardrums. It would make sense if it was some kind of geomagnetic event or geophysical event. Like when there's an earthquake, birds, rats, animals are known to go a little bit nuts just before it happens. They have some kind of sense for this. So it's possible, whether it was natural, it was induced, by man-made means, that the animals, the birds, sensed something and went up and then were struck down by whatever it was that was happening in the sky. So back to the video put up by Patriotic Spaces channel. It's a little excerpt of some of the stuff that he mentioned. Now, he has a friend called Jenny. She subcontracts for the Department of Energy and for the Air Force, and she writes training materials for the government regarding biological, chemical, and nuclear attacks. What showed that it could have been HAARP was that Jenny triangulated the 3 places where the animals are dying, which was Beebe, Arkansas, Gilbertsville, Kentucky, and LaBarre, Louisiana, or near LaBarre. Okay, and they explain how that HAARP can triangulate frequencies, create perfect 120-degree angles between all spaces, all 3 places. Well, what you see there is that all 3 places that are at perfect 120-degree angles from each other, and he explains in this video how this may be very solid proof that HAARP was involved because of how they triangulate their frequencies. So the 3 die-off locations are at 120-degree angle from each other and define the perimeter of the most active region of the New Madrid fault. The HAARP antenna calibrates signals using a 120-degree radiating angle from the center point. The digisonde computes relative signal strength from each ray of the antenna for directional tuning. Can hardly read my writing. So is this a coincidence? That's the question. Does this sound like paranoid conspiracy theory? Well, does the technology even exist? Well, it does. Actually, Nikola Tesla back in 1908 had developed something basically the technology that they use for HAARP. And he had been commissioned by the US government to do some experiments in the US, and in one of them, when he did this, this coincided with a very strange event that happened in Tunguska, Siberia, Tesla Wireless and the Tunguska explosion. So I'm going to try to sum it up as well as I can. So basically, this town of Tunguska, Siberia, there is suddenly a big flash, everything starts shaking, and there's a mass animal die-off. It was blamed on a comet, although astronomers did not witness any comet entering the atmosphere, and there was no crater. So whoever put the official explanation out said that the comet had entered the atmosphere and then exploded. Although, like I said, nobody saw anything like that. And at the time, I guess people were pretty awake because they said that this was just a hokey explanation that only, credulous people would swallow. Meanwhile, Nikola Tesla was doing these experiments in the US, and said that it was possible that what he was doing in the US could have this effect in Tunguska, Siberia. Imagine that, 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, they had that technology. So can you imagine what they can do now? And another thing is, if it was some kind of HAARP technology, that doesn't necessarily mean it was the US, because they're not the only ones who have it. I think the Russians and the Chinese also have it. And it can cause this effect from, a great distance. So it's possible that it was some kind of technology like this, but that it wasn't the US military or government doing it. Let's assume that Sorchafal is a disinfo agent. I'm not saying she is, but let's just assume. Wouldn't it be a good way to put out disinfo, say, leaked from the Russian military, that John Wheeler was killed because he was about to leak some information about phosgene gas, which I don't believe. People get killed all the time, especially people who are involved with the mafia known as the government and the military, and a lot of scientists as well. They get killed. Just look up dead microbiologists. There's about 100 of them. To say that this was caused by that, when there's really no evidence that it was any kind of poisoning, say it comes from the Russian military, could be actually like kind of, way of pointing the finger at America. I mean, why was this published right away in the EU Times? It's strange. So it makes me suspicious, and you got to consider that that may actually be disinfo, and that maybe it wasn't the US or the US military who did it at all, if it was even an event caused by military technology, and not just something caused by something like post-glacial rebound, as Scott says it probably was. They could just put this out as like kind of anti-American propaganda, because it's not like the Americans are the only ones who are capable of doing these things, as I've mentioned. So this is basically what I've found up until now. Some of these things are very similar, maybe related. Others are being lumped together in a kind of hype frenzy about mass die-offs, which do happen naturally, although some of these, very particular, especially the ones in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Kentucky, there's a lot of evidence that it could be caused by HAARP. Yep, so that's pretty much where I'm at with it right now. I've narrowed it down to post-glacial rebound or HAARP, ruling out, power lines and fireworks. So that's it. I can't come to any conclusions, but let me know what you think, and thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.
The truth occurs.